Finding a chest of ancient gold will not make you a billionaire. It will just make you the prime suspect in an international legal circus. Welcome to the infuriatingly funny reality of hunting for sunken Spanish galleons. We have compiled 50 of the absolute most bizarre, confusing, and outright stupid rules that govern underwater treasure. Prepare to find out exactly why hauling a mountain of silver out of the ocean will somehow leave your bank account completely empty. 1. Spain still actively claims absolute ownership of every single military vessel that ever sank under its flag, regardless of where it rests or how long it has been there. It does not matter if a galleon went down in 1622 off the coast of Florida, and you spent millions of your own money excavating it. According to international maritime law, that ship is still a sovereign extension of the Spanish government. They essentially treat a 400-year-old shipwreck like an active embassy that just happens to be underwater. Makes you wonder if you should be charging them rent for using our ocean floor, right? 2. If you strike it rich in Florida state waters, the state government automatically gets to cherry-pick 20% of your findings for their museums before you see a single gold coin. And no, they do not just take the damaged stuff. They bring in state archaeologists to select the absolute rarest, most historically significant, and valuable items from your haul. You assume all the financial risk of dodging sharks and hurricanes, and the state essentially shows up at the finish line with a shopping cart. 3. The playground rule of finders keepers holds zero weight in admiralty law. If you discover a wrecked galleon, you do not automatically own the gold. Under the law of salvage, you are legally viewed as a helpful tow truck driver who just happened to secure someone else's lost property. You must present the treasure to a federal admiralty court, which then decides how much of a salvage award you actually deserve. The original owners, or their insurance companies from 3 centuries ago, can still legally show up to demand their property back. 4. To secure your legal rights to a sunken galleon, you literally have to sue the shipwreck in federal court. It is a legal process called an in rem arrest. You bring a piece of the wreck, like a silver piece of 8 or a cannonball, into the courtroom and officially hand it to a U.S. Marshal. The lawsuit is filed entirely against the inanimate pile of wood and gold resting on the ocean floor. Yes, the official court documents will actually read something like John Doe versus the unidentified shipwrecked vessel. 5. Keeping your massive discovery a secret is actually a fast track to losing it completely. Admiralty courts require transparency. If you quietly pull up gold and hide it in your basement while continuing to secretly search the area, you forfeit your rights. The law dictates you must publicly declare your finds to establish an official legal claim. By hoarding your treasure to avoid attention, you are legally abandoning your rights, allowing a rival company to sail in, publicly declare the site, and completely steal the very galleon you spent years finding. 6. The United States federal government pulled a fast one on treasure hunters with the Abandoned Shipwreck Act. If a galleon is embedded in the submerged lands of a state, the federal government asserts ownership and immediately transfers that title to the state. The catch is the word embedded. If the gold coins are resting loosely on top of the sand, you might have a case. But if those coins are stuck in the mud or covered by coral, they belong to the government. So your entire financial future basically depends on the density of the sand. 7. Cleaning your own treasure can actually land you in massive legal trouble. Many permits require strict adherence to archaeological standards. If you pull a heavily encrusted clump of silver coins from the ocean and scrub them with acid to reveal the shiny metal underneath, you have just destroyed historical data. Bureaucrats care more about the precise composition of the barnacles attached to the gold than the gold itself. Scrubbing your treasure too aggressively could lead to the total revocation of your salvage permit and severe financial penalties. 8. There is a hilarious loophole regarding smuggled treasure. Spanish galleons were notoriously corrupt, and wealthy passengers often smuggled unregistered gold to avoid paying taxes to the king. When modern courts award treasure, Spain can only claim the gold that was officially documented on the ship's ancient manifest. If you find a chest of completely undocumented, highly illegal contraband gold that some greedy noble tried to hide from the crown in the 17th century, you actually have a much stronger legal claim to keep it for yourself. 9. Finding a single human bone near your massive pile of gold is the ultimate nightmare for a treasure hunter. The moment human remains are discovered, the shipwreck ceases to be a salvage operation and legally transforms into a maritime gravesite. This triggers a completely different set of incredibly restrictive international laws that can shut down your entire excavation instantly. You are legally required to leave the area undisturbed out of respect for the dead, effectively leaving millions of dollars guarded by a solitary 400-year-old femur. 10. The maritime archives in Spain are filled to the brim with completely fabricated documents. Ship captains frequently lied on their official manifests to trick pirates or hide their exact routes from rival empires. Modern treasure hunters will spend millions following an authentic, verified 17th century document, completely unaware the captain intentionally wrote down the wrong coordinates to confuse his enemies. You are essentially spending a massive fortune trying to solve an ancient, incredibly expensive prank played by a dead Spanish navigator. 11. Imagine trying to hand legal papers to a pile of wet wood. When you arrest a shipwreck in federal court, a U.S. Marshal must technically serve the warrant. Since marshals rarely scuba dive, the court deputizes you to take the physical document, seal it inside a waterproof tube, and literally tie it to the rotting timbers of the sunken galleon. You are officially serving a lawsuit to a hurricane crime scene from 3 centuries ago. Do you think the fish are intimidated by our modern judicial system? Or do they just see a brand new plastic chew toy? 12. The IRS is already waiting for their cut of your underwater fantasy. And they do not care if your gold is still dripping wet. They tax your recovered treasure at ordinary income rates based on its current market value, even if you have not sold a single coin yet. The government immediately hands you a massive tax bill payable in modern cash before you even find a buyer for your ancient silver. You essentially go bankrupt the exact moment you strike it rich. 13. Moving a little bit of sand can instantly turn you into a federal criminal. Treasure hunters use special deflectors called mailboxes to gently blow away layers of ocean floor to reveal the hidden gold. However, if your artificial current accidentally rips up a highly protected patch of rare seagrass, the environmental fines levied against you will instantly eclipse whatever treasure you just uncovered. In the eyes of the government, a random clump of underwater weeds will always outrank your lifelong quest for Spanish riches. Who knew grass was so expensive? 14. You absolutely cannot just throw a salvaged cannonball into the trunk of your car and drive home victorious. Ancient artifacts must be maintained in the exact same saltwater environment they were found in. If antique wood or cast iron dries out too quickly after centuries underwater, the sudden oxygen exposure makes it literally crumble into worthless dust within a few hours. You are legally and practically required to transport these priceless, centuries-old historical relics floating inside glorified plastic kiddie pools in the back of a rented pickup truck. 15. Corporate insurance companies have incredibly long memories. If you locate a merchant galleon, you might have to fight a business entity that has existed since the 17th century. Massive syndicates like Lloyd's of London actually insured some of these disastrous oceanic voyages hundreds of years ago. Since they technically paid out the original claim to the Spanish merchants, they still legally own that lost cargo today. Imagine getting sued into oblivion by a relentless insurance adjuster over a maritime policy that was handwritten in 1641. 16. Securing your claim in court creates a highly paranoid, stressful nightmare. To get legal protection, you must publicly file the exact GPS coordinates of your massive discovery. This means rival treasure hunters, affectionately known as claim jumpers, can literally read the federal court docket, sail out to your location, and anchor their massive boats exactly 1 inch outside your legal boundary. They just sit there drinking beer, legally waiting for you to drop a gold bar over the invisible line. That has to be the most annoying neighbor scenario imaginable. 17. Mother Nature can actively rewrite your legal jurisdiction overnight. The boundary line for state waters is officially measured from the coastline. But what happens when a massive Category 5 hurricane shifts the sandbars and physically alters the entire shape of the beach? Your galleon, which was perfectly safe in federal waters yesterday, might suddenly be swallowed by state territory today. The state government can absolutely swoop in and seize your entire operation based on a wild geographical technicality completely caused by some bad weekend weather. 18. You are strictly forbidden from simply digging up a wreck like a pirate. You have to map every single pebble first. Bureaucrats demand exhaustive archaeological surveys before you touch anything. You must meticulously record the exact spatial relationship of a broken rum bottle sitting next to a piece of ballast stone. If you yank a massive gold bar from the sand, but fail to document its exact grid coordinates beforehand, the judge will revoke your salvage permit permanently. You must become an underwater accountant before you can become a wealthy adventurer. 19. You are legally forced to pay the salary of the person trying to shut you down. When a state grants you a permit to excavate a historical shipwreck, they require an official marine archaeologist to be present on your boat at all times to monitor your work. The hilariously painful catch is that you have to pay their expensive daily rate out of your own pocket. You are financially responsible for funding the exact government watchdog whose sole purpose is to hit the giant red stop button if you happen to disturb an endangered crab or a piece of old wood. 20. Finding indigenous artifacts mixed in with Spanish treasure triggers a massive bureaucratic explosion. Much of the gold carried by these galleons was brutally looted from the Americas. If you uncover culturally significant items belonging to native populations alongside those silver coins, strict international repatriation laws take immediate effect. You are no longer just fighting the Spanish crown in court. You are now caught in a highly complex, fiercely contested, multinational custody battle over stolen heritage. Good luck paying the legal fees on that one. 21. Environmental protection laws will always laugh directly in the face of your historical discoveries. Let us say you finally locate a legendary bronze cannon packed to the brim with emeralds, but a highly endangered, incredibly rare species of sea coral has decided to make it a home. The coral automatically wins that fight. You are strictly forbidden from harvesting the treasure if it disturbs the protected marine life. Would you be able to sleep at night knowing your billion-dollar retirement fund is legally being held hostage by a tiny, stubborn underwater plant? 22. Hard-working commercial fishermen accidentally become international maritime criminals all the time. If a shrimp trawler legally dragging its massive nets across the deep ocean floor accidentally snags a verified Spanish naval cannon and pulls it onto the wet deck, they are in massive trouble. Because Spain aggressively considers that cannon an active piece of sovereign military equipment forever, the poor fisherman can technically be accused of launching an unprovoked attack on a foreign naval vessel. All they wanted was some shrimp, but they got a legal war. 23. How exactly do you declare a chest of gold to border customs that technically never left the local area? If you pull treasure from waters just outside the United States border and bring it to port, you must pass through customs. But assigning a declared import value to unique ancient artifacts that have no modern equivalent creates a paperwork nightmare that deeply confuses seasoned federal agents. You essentially have to make up a random, massive number and pray the unamused authorities just agree to stamp your forms so you can finally go home and celebrate. 24. Even if you miraculously win all your exhausting legal battles, you are almost never paid in actual cash. Courts typically grant a salvage award in specie, meaning they pay you by letting you keep a specific percentage of the historical artifacts you just found. You become an incredible millionaire on paper, but your bank account remains completely empty until you personally figure out how to auction off centuries-old silver bars to wealthy private collectors. Are you prepared to run a highly specialized antique dealership just to buy your weekly groceries? 25. The contiguous zone rule extends a nation's greedy bureaucratic tentacles far beyond its normal oceanic borders. Even if your galleon rests firmly in international waters, up to 24 nautical miles offshore, coastal states can still legally exercise strict control over the removal of any archaeological objects. You might genuinely think you are free and clear in the wild open ocean, only to find an angry Coast Guard cutter breathing down your neck because you accidentally crossed a completely invisible, highly arbitrary line drawn on an old nautical map. 26. You are heavily penalized for trying to be efficient. In the wild old days, impatient treasure hunters simply detonated powerful explosives to blast away the solid reef and quickly grab the gold. Today, international laws are so incredibly strict regarding site preservation that using anything rougher than a gentle water vacuum can land you in a federal prison cell. You are legally forced to excavate a multi-ton, deeply buried debris field using the underwater equivalent of a toothbrush and a dustpan. The ocean does not care about your schedule, and neither does the government.
27. The Spanish government actively monitors international auctions to aggressively hunt down private treasure. If you quietly bypass the courts, successfully smuggle a shiny gold doubloon from a galleon, and try to sell it at a prestigious auction house, beware. Spain employs relentless lawyers who do absolutely nothing but scan these thick catalogs looking for their lost property. They will slap a massive legal injunction on your sale faster than you can blink, aggressively demanding undeniable proof of exactly where that specific antique coin came from. 28. If a massive coastal storm washes a valuable piece of a galleon onto a privately owned beach, the resulting legal chaos is spectacular. Admiralty law usually governs all shipwrecks, but once that shiny gold lands on dry private property, local real estate laws suddenly crash violently into the equation. A random homeowner stepping onto their patio might actually have a much stronger legal claim to the antique gold resting on their sand than the professional treasure hunter who spent a grueling decade tracking the main wreck just 2 miles offshore. 29. You legally have to surrender your hard-earned data to the exact people trying to regulate you. When you secure a basic permit to search state waters, you are often required to hand over your raw sonar logs and expensive magnetometer readings to the government. You take on all the insane financial risk, buy the expensive fuel, and dodge the deadly hurricanes to map the deep ocean floor, while the bureaucrats get to keep a perfectly free, highly detailed chart of the underwater landscape. Does that feel like a fair trade for chasing your golden dreams? 30. Silver rot is a terrifying chemical reality that forces every impatient treasure hunter to become a slow-motion scientist. If you excitedly pull silver coins from the ocean and let them sit in the hot sun, the chlorides trapped inside the metal will expand, literally blasting the priceless coin apart from the inside out. Legally and practically, you must commit to a very slow, highly expensive process of reverse electrolysis that can take several years before you can even properly hold your treasure. You finally found the gold, but you cannot even touch it yet. 31. If you find a pirate ship that sank a Spanish galleon, the legal web gets even crazier. Privateers operated under a letter of marque, basically a government license to steal. If that pirate had a valid license from England when they sank the Spanish ship, England might suddenly show up claiming the stolen Spanish gold belongs to the British Crown. Imagine 2 modern governments fighting over treasure stolen by a legally sanctioned pirate. How insane is it that a piece of pirate paperwork from 1690 still holds up in a modern federal court today? 32. Black powder from the 17th century does not peacefully dissolve in salt water. Due to a terrifying chemical process, it actually becomes highly unstable when sealed inside a cast iron cannon for 400 years. When treasure hunters pull these ancient weapons to the surface and they dry out, they can literally explode on the deck of the recovery ship. You are not just recovering history, you are actively handling centuries-old, highly unpredictable underwater bombs. Who knew that shiny Spanish gold came equipped with ancient explosive booby traps? 33. Some state governments do not just politely trust you to hand over their mandatory cut of the shiny gold. They send heavily armed babysitters. Certain coastal state permits firmly require actual law enforcement officers to physically live on your tiny salvage boat while you excavate. You are entirely responsible for feeding and housing the exact armed guards whose only official job is to aggressively confiscate the best 20% of everything you pull up. 34. Hollywood loves to show glowing, pristine gold coins shining brilliantly on the ocean floor. But reality is incredibly muddy. While pure gold does not rust, silver and copper alloys heavily mixed into the coins by Spanish minters will severely corrode. Finding a legendary silver piece of 8 often looks exactly like pulling a completely unrecognizable, crusty black hockey puck out of the sand. You basically have to be a master chemist just to prove the nasty, barnacle-covered lump of rock you just found is actually a priceless piece of historical money. 35. You are never allowed to take a vacation. To maintain your legal rights over a discovered galleon, admiralty law requires you to demonstrate continuous and ongoing salvage efforts. If you run out of funding, or if your boat breaks down and you have to abandon the site for too long, a rival treasure hunter can legally swoop in, claim you abandoned the wreck, and take over the entire operation. Are you prepared to spend the rest of your life chained to a patch of empty ocean just to protect a claim that might not even pan out? 36. There is a massive, incredibly stressful legal difference between saving a ship and finding one. Under the law of fines, if you can prove a galleon was legally abandoned by its owner, you keep everything. But proving an empire intentionally abandoned $1 billion is nearly impossible. Spain will always argue they were just taking a 400-year break from looking for it. Because of this bizarre technicality, courts almost always apply the law of salvage, meaning the finder is legally downgraded to a glorified, unpaid underwater delivery driver. 37. Stealing a simple rock from the ocean floor could land you in federal court. Galleons used massive piles of smooth river stones as ballast to keep the top-heavy wooden ships from capsizing. Today, those specific rocks are considered highly protected archaeological artifacts. If you grab a smooth stone as a cheap souvenir without proper documentation, the government treats it with the exact same legal severity as stealing a solid gold bar. You could literally lose your entire commercial salvaging license over a useless rock that belongs in a garden bed. 38. Spanish crew members were masters of tax evasion, and their crimes can actually make you rich. To avoid paying the mandatory 20% tax to the king, sailors would melt smuggled gold into massive, incredibly thick chains and wear them as personal jewelry, which was entirely tax-exempt. If you find one of these gaudy, oversized necklaces on a shipwreck, Spain has a terribly hard time legally claiming it because it was never recorded on the official cargo manifest. Ancient tax fraud is officially the modern treasure hunter's absolute best friend. 39. The definition of a shipwreck is aggressively broad when it comes to regulation. You do not actually have to find a giant wooden hull with steering wheels and cannons to trigger international maritime laws. An isolated anchor, a single discarded cannon, or even an underwater debris trail of broken pottery from a ship that merely ran aground and survived is legally classified as a protected wreck site. You can be hit with massive preservation fines for disturbing a historical shipwreck when the actual ship safely sailed away 400 long years ago. 40. Having specialized salvage gear on your boat in foreign waters can make you an instant criminal. Many countries enforce a strict innocent passage rule. If you are sailing through their territorial waters with heavy magnetometers and underwater dredges bolted to your deck, the local Coast Guard can legally assume you are there to steal their underwater cultural heritage. They do not have to catch you digging. Simply possessing the tools is enough to have your expensive vessel seized and your crew thrown into a foreign jail. Talk about a hostile vacation. 41. Sovereign immunity has a ridiculously frustrating loophole regarding antique mail. If a privately owned merchant vessel happened to be carrying just one single bag of official royal correspondence alongside its cargo of private gold, the entire ship is suddenly classified as a sovereign government vessel. Spain can use a soggy, 300-year-old letter to claim absolute ownership of your hard-earned discovery. It feels entirely unfair that antique junk mail can legally rob you of millions of dollars after you spent a decade searching the ocean floor. 42. International treaties actively try to make your hard-earned treasure completely worthless. The UNESCO Convention strictly forbids selling artifacts from shipwrecks, meaning major museums are essentially blacklisted from buying your gold. Even if a museum genuinely wants your historical coins for public display, accepting unprovenanced loot could cause them to lose their international accreditation. The laws designed to protect history actually force treasure hunters to sell priceless artifacts to shadowy private collectors who hide them away in secret vaults. 43. A single dropped coin can completely shatter your legal chain of custody. When you pull treasure from the ocean, every individual piece must be painstakingly tagged, bagged, and logged on camera to prove exactly where it came from. If an exhausted diver accidentally drops a silver piece of 8 on the deck and it rolls away from its designated batch, it becomes legally orphaned. Without precise provenance, the court can completely refuse to include that specific coin in your salvage award. Are you meticulous enough to track every shiny piece of metal? 44. The Sunken Military Craft Act is the absolute destroyer of oceanic dreams. Passed by the United States, this law aggressively protects all sunken American warships forever. But the true nightmare for treasure hunters is that it also legally enforces the sovereign claims of foreign nations within U.S. waters. If you find a Spanish naval galleon resting comfortably just 3 miles off the coast of Miami, the American government will actively step in and fight you in federal court on behalf of the King of Spain. Your own country becomes your biggest legal enemy. 45. If you happen to discover a galleon in international waters and think you are safe from greedy governments, think again. The UNESCO Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage strictly prohibits the commercial exploitation of shipwrecks. According to this treaty, selling a single gold doubloon to fund your expedition is a massive violation of human history. They want all artifacts preserved together, preferably locked away in a museum basement, rather than circulating in the private market where people can actually touch them. 46. If a fierce storm buries your shipwreck, you instantly lose your legal rights to it. Admiralty courts demand continuous and successful salvage operations to maintain your exclusive claim. If a hurricane sweeps through and dumps 30 feet of heavy sand over your newly discovered galleon, making it impossible for you to retrieve any more artifacts, the judge can legally declare you have abandoned the site. Mother Nature can literally erase your multi-million-dollar legal monopoly overnight, simply by moving a massive pile of underwater dirt in the wrong direction. 47. The modern treasure hunter is forced to operate more like a frustrated librarian than an adventurous pirate. State permits often come with strict publication requirements. You are legally obligated to write, fund, and publish comprehensive scientific papers detailing the archaeological significance of your exact findings. If you fail to submit these incredibly boring, highly technical academic reports to the State Review Board by their strict deadlines, they will enthusiastically revoke your salvage permit and hand your golden claim over to someone else entirely. 48. The concept of marine peril is a surprisingly ridiculous hurdle you have to clear. To claim a salvage award, you must prove to a judge that the shipwreck was an active maritime peril. But how exactly is a wooden ship that has been sitting peacefully under 20 feet of sand for 4 centuries in any immediate danger? Treasure hunters literally have to argue that slow chemical corrosion or the threat of unauthorized looters constitutes an ongoing emergency just to justify their excavation. You basically have to invent a crisis to get paid for your hard work. 49. Modern sonar technology is incredibly advanced, but it legally blindfolds you to the most valuable targets. Magnetometers are designed to detect large clusters of iron, which is perfect for finding heavily armed warships covered in heavy cannons. But merchant galleons, which often carried the most valuable smuggled gold and jewels, relied mostly on wood and brass to save weight. Because they lacked massive iron guns, these incredibly wealthy ships are practically invisible to modern magnetic sensors. The absolute richest targets are the hardest to legally detect. Okay, we have navigated 49 mind-bending rules, leaving only one final point. But before number 50, it is time for the final verdict. The award for the absolute most absurd rule goes to legally deputizing a scuba diver to serve physical court papers to a rotting, 300-year-old piece of wet wood. The fact that our judicial system demands we officially hand a lawsuit to a fish habitat is peak legal comedy. Do you agree with this verdict? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And now, our final number. 50. The ultimate curse of the sunken galleon is not a mystical pirate hex. It is modern legal fees. The absolute wildest rule of treasure hunting is the unspoken mathematical reality
that you will almost certainly spend more money fighting for your gold than the gold is actually worth. Companies regularly discover ships holding millions in silver, only to spend a decade and tens of millions of dollars battling Spain, the federal government, and rival claim jumpers in endless court appeals. The lawyers always make significantly more money than the modern treasure hunters.
It turns out the greatest threat to a modern treasure hunter is not a pirate curse, but a bureaucrat with a clipboard. The system is rigged to ensure you never get to keep what you find. If you actually stumbled upon $1 billion in unmarked gold tomorrow, would you report it to the authorities? Or would you keep your mouth shut and hide it? Let us know your strategy in the comments below. Remember to subscribe for more crazy historical realities, smash the like button, and stay curious.